action.
Welcome back to an Intentional Marriage Podcast. We are Kristen and Chad, your podcast hosts, and we are here to discuss all things marriage because you know why? You know, great marriages don't just happen. You have to be intentional. So
hey, welcome in. Thanks for joining. We've been off for a couple weeks. So we had our family and grandkids were in town for a week, so we took some time off. And actually, our studio gets tore down and becomes a bedroom.
guest room.
A guest room for the family, for the kids. So we couldn't even video or record anyway because we were
in full-on grandparent mode.
We were.
Which is the reward for the topic we're going to be talking about today. Our parenting part 2.
Yes, parenting principles part 2. Kristen,
yes.
The first one was really good. We talked about some foundational things.
Yes.
And then really talking about littles and getting those foundations and principles established.
Yes.
But today we're going to go a little further.
We're growing up a little bit. We are moving into parenting the teen years.
Oh, the teen years.
I know. It just saying that kind of triggers a little anxiety in me. But actually, we went out to dinner last night with a couple that we had this discussion. And so it kind of brought everything back in fresh and I think prepared us for a good talk today.
Yeah, because it was on the docket anyway.
It was on the docket and they just kind of primed our pump a little bit and reminded us of a few things that are really important because I think those years kind of were a blur to me.
So, Kristen, when I think back to our kids' teen years, those tweener teens, middle school, high school, it was a blur. We had to figure out, but I do know one thing. It was taxing on our marriage.
I think that was the hardest season for our marriage. Apart from health crises, loss of loved ones, and just maybe job changes, moves, all that kind of stuff. Parenting teens was probably, you're right, the most difficult season in our marriage because you know what? It really highlighted our differences. And
yes.
I think that was the reason why, to be honest. And so I think where our conversation today is going is really, if I could encourage couples to take away one thing, it would be to provide a united front when it comes to parenting your teens. So I think we should start out talking about what that looks like.
Yeah, a united front. And that's hard. And when we say united, it means we're making decisions together, side by side, as one.
Yes.
But to get to that point of side by side and as one voice, one decision, one expectation, one consequence, that was the hard part.
Yes, because, all right, let's just share our dynamic a little bit. You, coming from your background in education, and you had much more experience with kids, being around kids. I just was around 4, my own. And I had my mom heart that I could not separate. And so you had a little bit broader of an experience when it comes to kids. And my tendency was to say yes, to believe the best, and protect, honestly. And
good way to put it.
Your tendency was to cut through the crap. You were able to spot the lies a lot faster than me. And you were like, no, this is not the whole picture. This is not going to happen. I'm like, why? It sounds like a great idea. You're being so hard.
Well, we're giving some generalities.
Okay.
Let's jump into some stories.
Some specifics? Okay.
Yeah, let's get some specifics and maybe you can relate if you've got teens or maybe the teens right around the corner.
Right.
So we're hoping some of the stories and how we reacted and the ways we learned how to resolve it or fix it.
Yes.
Maybe can help you guys as well.
So what are you thinking
Where are you
of?
gonna start?
Where do we start? Well, okay,
let's go with asking to do something with buddies.
Okay.
Something simple.
Well,
so one of us as well was the yes mom, yes person, and one of us was more of the no.
We've already clarified.
Yes.
I was yes, you were no.
So when the kids, any of them would want to ask something that they knew they may not get a yes from dad. They were new to go to mom. And they go, hey mom, can I go hang out with such and such, or can we go do this after the game? Normally your first response was,
my first response was
sounds good.
Yes.
And normally my first response was, no, not a chance. And our kids knew that. And so what they did is they started to come between us, isolate the question. They would just go to Kristen.
Yes.
To get the answer.
And then it would backfire on us, because then we would start fighting. You would say, well, why did you say yes? Do you know what those kids are into? No way am I going to let the kids, go out and do that. And I was like, well, I can't say no now. It's too late. And it would just start us fighting. And then, it just did not end well, and it went into a negative direction. So what we learned to do was we had the kids text. This is where the benefits of technology come into play. We had them text both of us in a group message, and that way we both were aware of the request at the same time. We could side door it and go, I could call Chad, he could text me on the side and be like, hey, no way, this is not a good idea, or okay, maybe this is a good idea. And we could talk about it and have some clear game plan and response, so we could be that united front, that one voice, instead of.
And that's, Kristen, what I think you're getting at. That was just one area. When they would ask for something, they needed to ask us both, whether in person or through a text. We had to be unified then. Maybe it's the expectation of, we expect you to be back at 11 or midnight, whatever that was. We had to be unified in our answer before we were in front of them.
Yes. Because what happens is kids will pit us against each other.
They'll sense weakness.
They're
like a shark. They sense blood in the water, and here they come to get what they want and fight and scratch and claw.
Right. And so, where was I going with this? They sense weakness, and they pit us against each other. And so it really strengthens our relationship and makes things a lot clearer if we are on the same page ahead of time, rather than.
Yes. And Kristen, but we were not on the same page for a while. And we had to come up with some techniques in our marriage to help our teenagers navigate, because our values were the same, our morals were the same. But what happened, if one of our kids asked us something or there was an expectation, we started learning, instead of responding right away, we said, let me check with your dad, or let us go talk about it and think about it for a little bit. So instead of giving that immediate response, yes or no, I had to quit saying no right away.
And I had to quit saying yes right away. I had to say, let me check with dad. We will get back with you. Because here's the other thing that can happen is we can easily make the other look like the bad guy. And
one be the good guy.
Right. It would be the good cop, bad cop. And I mean, because I do see this dynamic in conversations that we talk to, and we've experienced it. And so where it'd be like the answer to the kids, well, I would say yes, but mom says no, or dad's just in a bad mood and he said no, or whatever. I think you have to be super careful about not making the other parent look bad and put all of the decision on them.
That's good. And sometimes they may come to me and they say, can I do this? Well, what did your mom say? Oh, she said I can't. Okay, then I support your mom.
Yes.
And so it's that supporting unified front in the decision. It could be simple about, hey, I want to make some French toast this morning, and your son makes a disaster of the whole kitchen. We don't need to up front have an agreement and talk in the bedroom.
Right.
But if they went to you and you said, no, we're late for school, we're not making that, and then they come to me, hey, can we make French toast? What'd your mom say?
Yeah.
No, I want to support Kristen, and she would support me. But again, you have to be careful because they want to pit you against each other.
Yes. And what we had to do too, what we learned the hard way, was to have these conversations behind closed doors. Because I didn't always agree with Chad's decision, and he didn't always agree with my decision. And sometimes we were put on the spot. And so we had to give ourselves space and grace to say, okay, wait a minute. Like, hey, either side text, I need to talk to you about this because I don't think that's a good idea, or you're coming down way too hard. Or
let me give an example of that.
Okay.
One of our kids came in late or did something we were against, whatever the rule was, expectation. They came in and all of a sudden I'm just lambasting them. Where were you? What were you doing? You knew.
Right.
Boom, boom, boom. You're grounded for a month. And early on in our marriage, Kristen right then would start defending whoever I was going after to protect. That's what moms do. Mm-hmm. Protect, and that's too much. What? That's crazy. You can't do this. And all of a sudden, our kids start seeing that.
That was like the shark sensing the blood in the water.
They could tell that mom was now mad. And now instead of the both of us being mad at the kids, our sons or daughters' behavior,
right,
their actions, and being both unified in a common discipline, we're now fighting.
Right.
And we now quickly forgot about what we were even upset about them about.
Right.
And they got off on things.
Exactly. Because we were mad at each other.
Mad at each other. So we learned real quick. And I remember I said to Kristen, it was after one night where I blew up. I said, can you do me a favor? You can disagree with me 100% that I'm overreacting, wrong, argued, yet whatever. But will you please do it behind closed doors?
Yes.
I feel like when you do it in front of them, I feel disrespected. And so Kristen at first like, well, what? I said, will you please? And so we sat in our bedroom and she goes, okay, let's talk about the incident tonight. I think you way overreacted. And I think a 1 or 2 day grounding would be sufficient. Now I'm sitting, I can hear that. Yeah, you're probably right. I probably overreacted. I need to apologize, number one. And number two, let's maybe 3 or 4 days. What do you think? Mm-hmm. So now all of a sudden,
to compromise.
Yeah, we compromised because there's times as parents we don't act good. We let our actions and our feelings and anger get the best of us, and I did that a lot.
So maybe I'm just thinking as you're talking, maybe our kids will listen and they can appreciate mom a little bit more. Just kidding. Just kidding. Oh, but anyway, I just had to throw that out there. No, but it took some growth. I'm teasing, honey. It took growth for both of us because I was a quick rescuer and a yeser. Is that a word? A yeser rescuer. But here's another thing that what my behavior was doing was it was enabling you to continue overreacting or whatever, because if I was going to swoop in and I was going to be the savior and I was going to make it right, that didn't allow you the opportunity to repair what you had done or go back and apologize and build trust within the kids by saying, hey, you guys, you know what? I overreacted in that. I was angry at what happened and I might have been a little bit extreme here. So I apologize for that. You know, doesn't excuse your behavior. Mom and I talked and we have decided together that it's going to be 4 days instead of a month or whatever. Right. But so I think we've kind of given a good picture as to what that looks like. Mm-hmm. But I think even a step before all of this is to have a conversation about what you're in agreement on, what the expectations are. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about this topic in August, which is, you know, back to school is right around the corner. And we didn't do this, but I think it's a good idea. Looking back, I wish we would have had these conversations at the start of each school year.
Yes.
With each kid, where we're at, what age level they're at, what maturity level, what their schedule looks like, to say, hey, you guys, this is what the year looks like. Mm-hmm. This is, you know, what grade you're in. This is what the responsibilities you are able to handle.
That's a great idea. And I love that because a sophomore or junior in high school, those expectations and freedoms will be different than a 7th or 8th grader.
Exactly.
Or a 9th grader to a 12th grader. And so, yes, we have the same values, principles, expectations, but as they grow,
Yes.
as they're becoming young men and young women, we want to be giving them more and more rope
Yes.
to make some of their own decisions. Maybe it's you sit down with them one-on-one and let them start adding value in their thoughts in some of those expectations. What's a good time for curfew on the weekend? What do you think, Cameron?
Right.
Oh, 2 a.m. No. Let's bring it back. Or, okay, let's say you violate your curfew. You were supposed to be in at 10 on a weeknight. You have school, or 9, whatever it is. What might be the consequence? What do you think would be fair for mom and dad to do?
Yes.
So as they get older, you can start including them in that.
In the decisions.
And the consequence of the decision. So now we're not getting mad as mom and dad at their behavior. There's a consequence
Yes.
that's lining up, and they know they were a part of it.
Like we said on the last episode, and this is, I think, is the number one parenting tip that I would pass on to anybody that asks, like, what's a good parenting, rule? Clear expectations, clear consequences, and follow through. So, and that just saves such grief in all aspects and all relationships between husband and wife and between parents and kids, because the expectations are laid out, the consequences. And so again, if the expectation isn't met, the consequences are the bad guy. It's not us.
Right.
And we can just redirect and say, I'm sorry you made that choice, but this is what we agreed upon. This is the consequence. And now, here's what is going to happen. Your phone's going to be mine for a week.
And Kristen, that is really good, because we started learning that as we were getting to number 3 and 4. It took the first
Poor number
two,
1 and 2.
4, 1, and 2. And so we started learning that instead of getting mad and upset, we started using the things they enjoyed, maybe their cell phone, maybe they're hanging with friends, whatever it was. We started using those things to get what we needed. Hey,
to motivate behavior.
Hey, you're going to get your chores done. I need this and this and this. If it's not done in an hour, your phone's mine. Well, all of a sudden it's 4:00. Hey, time's up. They didn't do it. Hey, that was agreed upon.
Put the phone on the counter and find something else to do.
You knew the clear expectations.
Yes.
So going in, and Kristen, like you said, we're getting ready to start school. Maybe as parents, you need to sit down and start talking about what are our expectations for phone. What are they for the opposite sex, for friends, for sporting events, other things that you have had. Sit down and talk about all those areas.
Yes.
Maybe first with your spouse.
Yes, I think that's the conversation that needs to happen. That's our conversation behind closed doors. Hey, what do we think? And go down for each kid. If you have more than one kid and they're in different grades, talk about it. Say, hey, Carly's in 10th grade, Alex is in 8th grade, Cam's in 6th grade. All these expectations are going to look different.
Yep.
Maddie's elementary. They're not going to be the same.
No.
Expectations, but and that's why we need to clearly communicate them.
And some things, don't get me wrong, some things can be the same across the board.
Yes.
If it's dinner time, we always used to have a rule, we're having no cell phones, no technology at dinner time.
Right.
TV's off, all the cell phones are on the counter. So that was common no matter what age they were.
Right.
But then using them in the evening, weekends, where they would go, etc.
Yeah.
So speaking of technology, it made me think. So we would do every Wednesday night, we would do a Techno Wednesday. And for 3-4 hours, we would shut everything down. Everybody would. And at first, everybody griped about it. Probably Kristen the most.
Hey, you're probably right.
Facebook. But we had to learn, and it was actually some of the best time, because we would go take drives to see people. We would play games. We would just do different things. But then we had to alter it too as we got farther down the road. We had to say, your technology, you're going to charge your phone in our room at night.
That was an expectation, yes.
That was an expectation. Well, what?
For everybody.
For everybody. So things like that we started setting up so they could go to sleep. Because as parents, you didn't know this. Your kids, if you let them have their phone at night, they're on it all night long.
I could not believe when our kids first started doing this, the notifications that were blowing up on our kids' phone at night. I'm like, when do these kids have time to do their, like sleep and function? But anyway, so I liked that, and we were sticklers on that one. And
Yes.
that's kind of how it turned into Maddie would come in and tuck us in
So
at night.
Our youngest daughter, so she was 11 years later, and we were probably a little more tired after just dealing with the other three, mainly Cameron. So
Hope he's not
our
listening.
daughter, Maddie, when she got to high school, she'd always come down to plug her phone in our room, and we were getting older, so now we wanted to go to bed. And so she started tucking us in.
Yep.
Maddie, come
The
tuck us
tables
in.
were turned.
We're going to bed. And so she would come down, plug in her phone, and then
But-
plop on her bed and
Yes.
talk. I'm like, Maddie, go to sleep.
Some of those were the best chats, though, where our plug your phone in,
Because the
tuck in
phone
time.
was put down.
Yes, the phone was put down. So, like, definitely an expectation for technology is a conversation to have. Another conversation to have is boundaries with the opposite sex.
Yep.
We had to discuss, each year looked different with dating expectations. I mean, we had the same expectation across the board as teens.
How old till they could
Nobody
date?
was allowed to be in our house with the opposite sex when we were not home.
Never in the bedroom.
Yes, the bedrooms were off limits. Our house was off limit if parents weren't home.
Only double dating
Double
until
dates.
they got 16 or we felt they were ready.
Yes, group events were the best. So opposite sex, technology. Here was one, though, that we had that was a non-negotiable. And this was all across the board, everyone. And that was church and youth group events.
Church on Sunday.
That was just a non-negotiable. Like, everybody knew we're going to church on Sunday, and if there's a youth event, you guys are signing up and you're going because these are great environments for you to be a part of. And that just was our expectation, and there was no really wiggle room. And I would have, see other families and, oh, where's so-and-so today? Oh, we let them sleep in and da-da-da. Our kids didn't have a choice. They were up, and it was just never...
They may fight about it a little bit, but
yeah.
that was the expectation because we had to be there. But
It might sound strict, but I don't regret it.
But one thing we did with our kids or teenagers, they were very busy and active. They were in sports, they were in other things, they were in church. And they always wanted to be on the go. Most teenagers do. They want to be friends, they want to go where the action is. But when it came to the weekend, a Friday or Saturday, they hated me for it at the time. I said to them, you can choose one day, Friday night or Saturday night, to do something big. To go hang out, to have friends or whatever. You're not going to do things Friday and Saturday night. They hated it. Dad, we never had fun 2 nights in a row.
And they still say that.
They still laugh at it.
They still laugh.
But I knew my kids that they would go and push till they were running to the ground, sick. Our son Alex, he was a go, and he would play the drums on Sunday morning. But we had to slow him down, especially, and he would crash Sunday afternoon. He would fall asleep on the floor for 3 hours
In
straight.
the middle of the living room, we're stepping out over him. Yeah.
And that was with only doing something on Friday night or Saturday night.
Yes.
But they were so busy and so tired. You have to know your kids. And I think it's okay at times to say no to them and to know that boundary. They don't have to like every decision we make.
Right.
They don't. But they have to learn and respect it.
Yes.
And then as they get older, to verbalize it, share it. I'd like to see this changed. Well, what would you like to see it changed to? And you can start having conversations.
Yes.
And things can change as they get older. But it was important to me that they got their rest.
Well, and what you said touched on what I really feel like the goal. Well, what is the challenge in parenting teenagers is really managing that tension between no and go. The yes and the no.
Yes and
it's
no.
managing that tension. That is really what it boils down to, is because they are growing, and the goal as a parent of a teenager is to nurture them into their full potential and give them more freedom, and our goal is to, grow them into the person that God created them to be. And we're noticing and calling out those positive qualities and looking for what they're interested in, and really encouraging and challenging them to go in that direction. But the tension to manage is between the yes and no.
Yes.
Because we want to say yes, we want to give you freedom, we want you to, experience all the things, but we're still your parents,
Yes.
and we still have a responsibility. We know what's best, believe it or not. They didn't think we did. So I think that speaks to your point.
And Kristen, I really like that you said that, because I was thinking as you were talking about that. One of you in your marriage is the yes person.
Yes.
And one of you is the no.
Most likely.
Most likely. If it's a 50-50, hallelujah.
Yeah, that's great.
But what happens is, if one of you is always yes and one of you is always no, that's not good tension. Because I'm going to tell you what,
Yes.
the no person, I was the no person. I didn't want to be a no person.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to say yes more often.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be the bad guy. But someone was always being the good guy.
Are you pointing fingers? If you can't see us right now, somehow fingers were pointed right there.
So,
no, I'll agree.
So what I want to say is, if you're normally naturally a yes, you need to try and work on it. I need to say no a little more.
Right.
And if you're a natural quick reaction of a no like I was, you need to say yes a little more.
Right.
And that makes things so easy, because again, I like being able to say yes. I did want to have fun. Mm-hmm. But we also know we
do have to have limits and boundaries and healthy limits.
and
Yes.
be together. And sometimes I was going to be no, but you behind closed doors, this isn't a big deal. They're super nice. It's going to be okay. Yeah. She could help me come to a yes just as much as I could help her. No, they're not going with those kids.
Yes.
Those kids are smoking dope or doing whatever else. So when we go behind closed doors, we can help each other have
balance.
A unified yes or no.
Yes. And, again, just touching on as we wrap up a little bit, I think it is important to really pay attention in those teen years as to what your kids are leaning towards, interested in. Yes. They're just looking for what God has designed them to be and really encouraging that in them. And I could go down each of our 4 kids and, in high school, Carly was very interested in basketball. I mean, she was an all-around athlete, but basketball was her number one. And we encouraged that. We, sent her to sports camps. And so today she's a varsity basketball coach back at her, hometown high school. Alex was very interested in the exercise, the weightlifting, the CrossFit. Guess what? Today he owns a gym. We encourage that. Cameron was much more of an outdoorsy, anything with a motor and he went into the Marines. And Maddie, I was a little worried about her for so long, and she knows this. I'm not saying anything that I shouldn't, but I was like, well, all of the other kids were so athletic, and now we've got this number 4, and she, poor thing, can't even catch a ball. And I'm like, what in tarnation? What? Well, guess what? She turned out to be the most artistic, creative woman, and we nurtured that through school, and she started her own jewelry making business in her senior year of high school. And so I just want to encourage parents too to look for their strengths and really nurture and encourage them in that direction.
Yeah, that's
so
cool. I like that. We just want to encourage you out there, you parents. We know teenage years are not easy. Mm-hmm. We know they're not at all. Hang in there.
Yes.
It's worth the fight. Again, you're their parents,
not their friends.
You're their parents, not their friends. There's going to be a time when you're going to be friends with them. There's going to be a time when they come to you for that advice. But during the teenage years, somebody's got to say no, and somebody's got to set limits, and somebody's got to go through the consequences. It has to happen. All teenagers need it. My boys needed it. Our daughters needed it.
Yes.
I needed it. You needed it as a kid.
Yeah.
We all do. It's part of the growing process. It's part of understanding that. So just want to encourage you to hang in there, unify together. Before you respond, go behind closed doors.
Yes.
Talk. Maybe text your spouse ahead of time. Hey, we need to talk. Something's come up with your daughter. Something happened with your son. Have those conversations before getting blindsided when you walk in the door at night or something happens. So
And as a couple, I was just going to say, err on the side of over communicating with each other rather than under communicating.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of other details that, kids leave out. So yeah, when you said that, to provide that unified front, err on the side of over communicating with your spouse. That's going to help alleviate a lot of misunderstanding as well.
Yeah.
But
And I would strongly recommend, because we pray together every day. It's huge to us. Pray over your kids, especially your teenagers, daily.
Yes.
Pray over some of these decisions.
Yes.
If you guys are at odds, just pray, hey, God, what's the best way? Do I need to budge? Can my wife, let us come to a unified agreement. Let us, what are those expectations? Help us with our son. He's driving me nuts. I have gray hair and I'm pulling it out. Just help him. Give your kids over to prayer and protect them in that. Because our world is harder and crazier today than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It's bonkers out there. So cover them in prayer.
And be a safe place for them to land. Make your home a safe place that they can just come home and, shelter from the storms that are going on around out there. And that's just
because we can't shelter them from the things, but we can talk about the things and talk about our faith and what you believe, what you value. Yes, that may be happening, but what do we feel? What do you think? And you can have those great conversations around those tough topics that your teenagers will bring home.
But here's the good news. We made it. And we aren't the only ones. So surviving teenage years is a real thing, that you can do it.
And I don't even think surviving, but I think you can thrive. It's hard, but you can thrive by doing some of these things. By getting unified, talk about those expectations. What are those consequences?
And pray.
Yeah, and pray.
Like there's no tomorrow. So, we'll wrap up our conversation for today. And we just thank you for listening, joining in, and we look forward to our next episode, because you know why? We know great marriages don't just happen. You have to be intentional. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks.